welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Jessica with Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I am here today with two amazing people. The first amazing person is someone you actually probably all know both of them, but the first one is the one who sits next to me almost every day. My amazing co-host, will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jen, and I am far, far less amazing than the third person in our conversation today.
And this is a really special podcast for us because every now and then, we'll get like a series of galleys or previews of what's coming up. And when we saw that Chris Chibnall, who was involved with Broadchurch and Doctor Who and many other things we love, was writing his first novel, I turned around to Jen and I said, let's see if he'll talk to us because I'm a huge fan, and I feel like there's a lot to be said for going from television to novel writing, and what a novel it was. So first of all, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. And let's not get into competition about who's the most amazing, because you guys, as public librarians, are amazing. And I've just said to you before we press record on this that some of my best friends are librarians. I'm very pro-library, so yeah, you guys win the awesome competition. Let's just agree on that.
Okay, thank you so much. I will not turn that down.
No, it's settled.
So let's talk about Death at the White Heart. This book was so good, and it takes us to some very interesting places by using very familiar territory. Do you want to just jump in a little bit and, give us a snippet about what the book's about and sort of how it came to you?
Yeah, thank you so much for those lovely words as well. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, it starts. I mean, if I tell you how it opens, and then it'll spread into what it is really. But it starts at 2 a.m. on a misty September night on a road called the A35 in England, in West Dorset, which is southwest England. And it's a very deserted rural road. And a guy who's driving home comes across in the middle of the road a body tied to a wooden chair. His lower half is in a Hessian sack, and tied to his head is a crown of deer antlers. And that's the opening of the book. And what we learn is that the body is that of the local pub landlord, Jim Tiernan, who is the landlord of a pub called the White Hart, of the title, in the village of Fleetcombe. And the novel is the story of a detective called Nicola Bridge, who is born and bred in Dorset, has been away in Liverpool in the northwest of England for a couple of decades. She's come back home to sort out some issues with her own life and her family, and she's hoping to get a very quiet life in this rural part of England. Spoiler alert, she does not get a quiet life, you'll be astonished to learn, because she has to investigate the murder of this pub landlord. And really, it's I hope, you can tell me whether it is or not, a twisty, turny, compelling, page-turning whodunit, which it shares, as you were saying, the sort of classic identity of a great British detective novel, almost a golden age Agatha Christie-style detective novel, but it's set very much now, and the characters and the suspects are people who I hope you'll recognize from your lives, doing jobs that people only do now. So very classic, very modern is what I hope I'm trying to do. And most of all, the sort of book that I hope keeps you up at night as you're just going, just one more chapter, just one more chapter.
I'd love to start with a question about the setting, because I understand that you also you live in Dorset and you've lived there for quite a while. So I'm really curious about what it's like writing the place that you live versus, writing a place that you are not so familiar with. What do you preserve and what do you get creative with?
Oh, that's such a good question. Yes, what do you preserve and what do you get creative with? I mean, the advantage of it is you're accidentally doing research daily, and you're infusing it, and hopefully there's an authenticity to it. Uh, but yeah, you're right in that you are not just holding up a mirror, you are creating a fictional version of the area. So Fleetcombe is not a real village in West Dorset. It's a compound of a number of different villages, and it shares the sort of important things of there's two pubs, there's not a post office anymore. It's a village that is a mix of people, but is also struggling to keep its identity. So I think what I'm trying to do is honor the place where I live and make it feel like once you've read the book that you feel like you've been transported to that place. But if you go looking for that place, you're not gonna you're not gonna find it. But hopefully, if you were driving around West Dorset, you'd be saying, "Oh, there's a thing that looks like the playground from that book, or the pub, or the school, or the police, station, or that they use a disused bank as a police station in this novel." And so you're right in that it's very much a mix of the true and also then where you want to fictionalize. And I took inspiration from Thomas Hardy in this. Thomas Hardy writes about the same area and about Dorset and West Dorset, and in the front of the book there's a map which shows you sort of the territory of the story, and that's taken deliberately from how Thomas Hardy used to lay out his novel.
So one thing I can absolutely tell you is that mysteries and murders in small towns, especially small British towns, they have a wide appeal with the media and with the public. Jen and I work in the media department at the library, and I mean, Broadchurch is huge. People still are checking it out. But then there's also like so many other, just British small town mysteries, many seasons, and people just keep coming back for it. What do you feel the appeal is? Why does it hook into just something emotionally for people?
Yes, what a question. I think that first of all, I think there's a dissonance, really pleasing dissonance between the heinous nature of a killing and a community that a lot of people would like to live in, or would maybe we would aspire to live it in our sort of fictional lives. We might not want to live in it in our day-to-day lives because it's probably quite inconvenient. There's no public transport. There's not many facilities, but it has a sort of aspirational value to it probably from a lot of these stories over the years. But I think the distance between those two aspects is one. I think also they're hermetically sealed in many ways. People know each other's business in a small village. That's really helpful for the plot engine and for the nature of going in and investigating these characters' lives. So that's definitely important. And I think just generally it's the heritage as well. I think it's you can't write a novel like this and not want to tip your hat to the Agatha Christie, who sort of created this genre, and so you're always, whenever you're working in a genre, you're working in a lineage, obviously, and so it's part of that as well. So I think it's a number of reasons, and also it's manageable. I think you have the psychogeography in your head when you're reading the book, so you can go, okay, I understand where these clues are, where these characters live, and yeah, there's lots of different reasons.
I really like that last point because it clarified for me how I think when you set a mystery in a small setting like that, you get the benefit of like an expansive ensemble cast, but it's also sort of like a bottle episode, right? Like everybody is in the same place
Yeah.
and doesn't really quite leave, and it's a contained ecosystem sort of.
Yeah, and I guess people and so you get that pressure cooker vibe, because people are having to go back to their houses, which are 100 yards from the crime scene or whatever, and also I think exactly what you say. People can't leave if you do it in a city. It's a more transient population. People are more in and out, or in different regions, or different areas of different. You can hide in a city. You can't really hide in a village in the same way because people will know. So yeah, I think all of those things contribute, and there's about 9 other reasons as well. It's a really interesting thing, but it's just satisfying, I think.
One of the things that really struck me also about this one is just sort of that even though this is a quote unquote idyllic bottle of a small town, Nicola comes back to it. And it's a changed town. It's still changing with the world. People, everything is moving forward. And I liked that aspect of it, that yes, there are parts of it that are stuck in the past, but people will evolve as the world evolves. So I just wanted just a little bit to talk about, for you to talk about Nicola and just sort of where she's at, because she's lived a lifetime outside of this town. And then she comes back and she finds the ecosystem is the same, but it's also begun to grow much like the world around her.
Yeah, it's really true. And I think you've identified one of the key things I wanted to write about in the novel, which is the difference between all of our lives, the very, very subtle differences that sometimes I think we don't even notice, the difference between our lives now and, say, a decade or 15 years ago. So, for example, when I wrote the Broadchurch TV series you were talking about earlier, it's a given in that story that there is a functioning police force and a police structure. And that is not the case in a lot of places in the UK now, because there's been funding cuts. There's just things have eroded, and so as a good example, Nicola, as you say, she returns home and she's been enticed there by someone to get this job, and then when she arrives, she finds that the headquarters haven't been finished. There's the chief constable has disappeared in disgrace. She's not got the members of staff. She basically talks about it being absolutely not like it was in the brochure. What she's been sold is not true. And it's so, for example, where I live, there is not a police station sort of 24 hours a day. It's open a couple of hours a day, a few days a week. The local uniform and the CID is many miles away, and the local uniform officer who used to walk the streets isn't there. So I wanted to write about that and what she finds and the pressures that puts on her, because in a sense, what she gets is the case she least wants and most needs, it turns out, but she's got to deal with that with her wits, really, rather than any structural support. The only support she gets is she starts to work with a new partner called Harry, who is 10 years younger than her, has come through a sort of graduate fast-track training scheme where he's worked in other businesses, and which is something that the police are doing in this country. He's known as Westlife in the station. It's his nickname for his boy band Good Looks. And the novel is also about that relationship burgeoning between them having to figure each other out as they're investigating the case, and the chemistry and the dynamic between them is really, really central, because I hope it's a novel that's full of warmth and heart and humor, as well as this sort of dark story. I really wanted to balance the two, and important in that is Nicola is a character I hope you fall in love with. The story of the novel is also the story of what's going on for her at home, and she is a character, and that the partnership with Harry is a character I'm going to keep investigating. It's the start of a series, and I'm just writing book 2 now, and they're really important to me, and I love them, and hopefully they're going to go on a lovely long journey.
I loved your point about balancing the warmth and sort of the darker elements with the crime, because I think that speaks really interestingly to. I'd love to talk about the victim, the pub landlord, and the pub landlord's role, not just in this town, but perhaps in the English village writ large, because they're kind of a therapist, but also they can kind of blackmail you. They know everything about you. They're also your
Yeah,
friend.
yeah.
They might be have a business relationship with them. So can you talk about crafting that aspect?
That's exactly it. It's like any bartender is sort of, and we talk about it in the novel, is kind of a priest or father confessor, but with none of the moral obligations or legal obligations. So yeah, that was one of the reasons I wanted to. You're always looking, I think, for in a murder mystery, what is the story of your and the character of your victim, and because part of the journey that you go on across a novel like this is who is that victim? What were they like? We don't meet him before we discover him, and the reason for that is you're trying, like the detective, to put a picture of his character and his life together across the novel. And what's lovely about the role of a landlord is exactly what you're talking about there, Jen, and it's the multiple demands on their time is that they can absolutely, they want to organize a great night, but they know everybody, they know where everybody lives, they know where what everybody drinks, they know how much money people have got. They also, that's the person you're talking to when you've had one drink too many and you're just saying a couple of things that you shouldn't have. They're observing from the bar, they're seeing the dynamics that are playing out across the pub, they're seeing who's meeting somebody they shouldn't be. And also, the big thing is that in the UK now, pubs are closing at a very rapid rate, and so that kind of thing that's really a bit of a national identifier is completely under threat. And the idea of the pub and what it's for is changing really quickly. And so the pub as a sort of national metaphor is useful in the book. And I think one of those things is there's two pubs in the village and they're vying for supremacy. One of them is a more sort of upmarket foodie pub, and the other is more of a drinkers pub. And really the clash between those things and the different style of being the person who runs a pub landlord or landlady, is also right in there. So yeah, I mean, just a brilliant sort of centerpiece to go. This person knows a lot, and also sometimes you don't know much about the person who runs the pub. They are a figure of mystery, and that's what Nicola and Harry have to unravel in this. And everybody does, and people have got different views, and people know different parts of Jim's life. So hopefully it just gives you those continuing, propelling twists and turns and surprises I was talking about earlier.
Do you plot very carefully, or do things just kind of like, do you trip over clues sometimes? Like, things
Yeah.
grow organically.
Yeah, it's I think it's a phrase from David Lynch, but it might be from somewhere else, which is plan rigorously and allow for happy accidents. And that's so the answer is yes to both. Try to plan it out, but I think always at some point what can be really delightful, occasionally frustrating, but usually delightful, is when your characters tell you what's going on and you go, oh, I didn't know that. And then sometimes characters turn out of the blue who you go, I don't know who this person is. They've just walked into this room, or my detectives have gone to visit this person and they've got a lot to say about this and I hadn't even realized. And so you know where you're going, but writing is like being a detective because you are detecting the story as you go and as you're creating it, and so you are responding to it and you're modifying as you go. And so and sometimes when you read drafts back, you think, oh my goodness, there's 7 clues in here that I didn't even spot, but these people have told me these things. So yeah, absolutely, and I think it's also. I've just adapted an Agatha Christie novel for Netflix, and I was doing that at the same time as I was writing this book. So I was sort of taking one apart, a great murder mystery by the empress of the murder mystery apart, while I was writing this, and and thinking about and researching into how she had done it and reading her autobiography. And she had a thing where, which I didn't know until relatively recently, where she would write about 70 to 80% of the book before she would identify for definite who the murderer would be, because you would read it back and go, what do I now know that I don't know before? So, yeah, it's a combination of all those things, and so much of it is the structuring and the planning allows you then to go to trust your instincts in other places.
Is that the same or different writing for the page than for the screen? I'm curious with regards to that, but also in general, were there particular advantages that you feel like you accrued from your screenwriting as you entered novel writing? And were there new challenges in the process?
Yes, yes, and yes is the answer to those questions. Was it the same? Yeah, I mean, I think with screenwriting, structure is so important, and you do a lot of planning before you write a script, particularly if you're working in genre. I think whether it's crime or sci-fi or anything like that, it's really important to have those in place. The things that I kind of took from screenwriting into this was a sense of plot propulsion, I hope, and this sense of keeping the story moving. And obviously that wouldn't necessarily apply to every type of novel, but in terms of coming into a genre which wants that level of detail, of pace and propulsion and surprises and twists. It was very useful for that, definitely. And then the things that were different. Well, and the other thing was the thing that I took from having done screenwriting before: sense of world building, understanding what you need from a world, and a sense of a character group, really. And I wanted to make sure that there was a real broad range of characters. There's characters. The youngest is a girl called Shannon, who's 9 years old and is watching things from, oh, you've clasped your heart, Jen. I like that. I love that response. And is watching things from the playground, and we're not sure about her. And then you've got characters who are in their 60s and 70s as well. So I really wanted to sort of cover lots of things, because I wanted everybody to have characters that that you can take different people's experiences of life, and they're all sort of overlooked in one way or another. Character building definitely as well from screenwriting. But I think the big difference, I mean, number one, is there's a lot more words in a novel than in a script. A lot more words, guys. That's what I discovered from a 60-page script to a 100,000 word novel. But the real thing, the real joy that you get as a novelist is the internal monologues and the interiority and telling the story from the perspective of your characters. So what I wanted to do in this, and hopefully one of the really enjoyable aspects for the reader, is the novel is told from different perspectives. So it's mainly told from Nicola's perspective as the detective, but you also get 4 or 5 different characters telling you about their lives, about their place within the story or not. So you have like Eddie, who's in his 60s, who's a van driver being tracked by an app minute by minute by his customers all day long. That is not the life he envisaged for himself. You've got Patricia, who's running an Airbnb. You've got Frankie, who's in a sort of cut price barbers, and Shannon, the 9-year-old girl who seems to be alone on a playground and seems to know more than she's letting on, but she seems to sort of wander around the village unsupervised. So I really loved the opportunity to tell their stories from their perspective, to be in their heads, to be in their hearts, so that hopefully you really connect and you feel emotionally directly connected to those characters, while also that really some of them must be unreliable narrators, and the joy of that, of going, well, they're, some of them or all of them may not be telling you everything in the chapters that they are leading. So the joy of that, and just the joy of being able to do different things with time. Sometimes something that might in a TV show be a close-up of an actor's face thinking could be a whole chapter in a novel, because you can go, what are they thinking about? And you're going into all of these things, and they're worried about this. They're thinking about that incident 3 weeks ago. They're worried about who's going to come through the door next. They're trying to fix something. So all of those things can really, the way you play with time is different. But really, yeah, the character work. And I hope that's the thing, again, which keeps you turning the pages and keeps hopefully surprising you in terms of where you're going next.
And all of those characters, like Jim, are the characters who would glean the most information about people without people really thinking about it. Like a hairdresser, the van driver, the person who, like the Airbnb, and a little kid. These aren't necessarily, while Nicola is the police detective and she's investigating things, people will say, oh, here she comes. She's going to want to know about XYZ. But the people who already know about it from different perspectives are not the people that you're going to be on your guard around. They're the people you're going to, like spill your guts to, or just not realize are actually there, or pretend like, you like, oh, well, they're not listening to what I'm saying. They totally are.
Yeah, that's really true. Do you know, I hadn't identified that. That's brilliant. I really thank you for that. You've revealed something to me. Yeah, because you're
I can
absolutely
quit
right.
my job. That is the best
Don't
compliment
quit your job.
ever.
You're a librarian. It's really important.
It is the best job ever. Yes.
Yeah. It's really true that they are, everybody's sort of a confessor and a receiver of the confessional, and those lines are very blurred, aren't they, in the novel? Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. That is illuminating. Thank you very much, Jessica.
I loved this book. It's getting such great reviews. I know it's already being adapted for the screen.
That's right. I'm going to be adapting it myself for the screen, and we're going to film it next year in Dorset if everything goes to plan.
And I know that our audiences are going to eat it up, both on the screen and on the page.
Oh, just absolutely lovely. Like, I am so excited to recommend this to people. I feel like it's going to be such an easy hand sell, as we say at the library. Like, it's going to be a lot of fun to recommend this.
Yeah, I'm anticipating multiple backlogs, multiple requests already. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for chatting with us, Chris. Come back anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much. My pleasure. I really love the conversation. I've learned something new today, but also thank you so much for everything you've said about it. It's so exciting to hear that you think that's going to be the case, and you think readers are going to respond to it, because it's been amazing so far. And just the thought of people taking a book that I've written out of a library, in the US is like it's such a thrilling thought. So thank you.
All right. So once again, this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast. My amazing co-host was
Jen. Goodbye, everyone.
and our amazing guest was
Chris Chibnall, writer of the new novel Death at the White Heart.
Check it out, but I'm sure people are already checking this one off as one that they're going to get. Thank you so much, everybody. We are going to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.